Hey, Colorado Springs. This is Jenny Bayless with another episode of the Colorado Springs Real Estate Investing Podcast. I wanted to do a little mini series for everyone where I picked a couple of my properties that I've owned for, 5 years or so. And I wanted to do a deep dive into those properties and just kind of show everyone kind of the history behind each of the properties and how they're performing throughout the years. Because I think it's really easy to, think about your first year performance, which is usually not super great because you're getting everything up and running. But, I think the best part about owning rental properties is a couple years after you've, worked out all the bugs in it and you've gotten it to a point where it's stabilized. And you just really get to kind of, reap the rewards of your hard work on that. Yeah. So I just wanted to do a mini series, like I mentioned. And this first property is very, very bread and butter rental property, in my opinion. It's 2 beds, 1 bath. It's located near the center of Colorado Springs. I think it is just kind of like your quintessential rental property. And I personally, I love this property. It is very simple. We haven't had any major issues in it, which obviously could change, hopefully not. But just wanted to kind of go through and just show everyone what exactly, this property looks like after having owned it for 5 years. I think a lot of investors, we always encourage a longer hold time, longer hold period on a property. But, it's always important to evaluate each property as it is. And usually 5 years is just kind of a good rule of thumb as to when you might want to think about, doing something with the property. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Just kind of figuring out what you want to do from there. So just to kind of give a little bit of background about this property, I bought it in 2018. I think it was probably fall timeframe, if I remember correctly. And I actually found it on Facebook. Someone had posted a coming soon, like Facebook post. So I immediately responded to the post. I guess it was probably on some Colorado Springs, Facebook group or something, and they were wanting $150,000 for it. I thought that was reasonable. It was, a mustard color outside, and it needed some paint on the inside, but I could tell that it was, overall a really good, solid house from the photos. So I immediately reached out to the person listing it and said, I would like it. Can we go see it tomorrow? So, rushed down there, saw the property. It was great bones, great property. So yeah, we went ahead and locked that up for 150,000. And yeah, so the rehab of the house is very good condition. It was we did get new windows installed, new appliances installed. And I remember that there was some electrical issues that we did uncover during inspection that the seller actually gave us a credit for to correct. So that was nice. I wasn't really expecting the seller to go ahead and do that, but they were surprised that the electrical issues existed. So they were very amenable to that. And then I remember specifically this property, I personally painted the interior and the exterior. Not fun. It's a small house, but I'm not a good painter. So it took me a really, really long time to do it. But got rid of the mustard colored on the outside and made the inside, very neutral and appealing to tenants, I think. So again, paid 150 for it. I can't exactly remember how much we put in. I don't think it was a ton. But we actually purchased it with a private lender, a family member. So for the purchase and the rehab, and then we did a rate and term refinance. So it ended up being about a half partial burr, if I remember correctly. And then, just in terms of where we're at today, I've seen a couple properties in this neighborhood sell for about 300,000. I would probably guess ours is probably worth like 280. I think you would need to do a little bit to make it pop as a a sale property. But it is a wonderful rental property. So yeah, I would say that's a pretty good return, having just bought it 5 years ago. So, um, if you're listening to this, you might want to watch the YouTube video, but I will try my best to, not bore everyone with rattling off the numbers related to this property. But just going into it, I have a spreadsheet set up where I have all of the 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22 in columns, and then I have the data points related to the revenue and expenses related to this property underneath it. So just kind of going through 2018, that was the year that we first started, or that we first purchased this property. So a lot of the expenses to get it up and running ended up having to be capitalized. So that you're not going to see that under the expenses. So, like I mentioned, there's a lot of paint, windows, appliances, all that, all capitalized as part of getting the property ready. So this is all just true operating expenses here. We rented it out for just a few months. Like I mentioned, I think we bought it early fall. So just had a couple months to get it ready and rented, and we made about 4,500 that year. Just typical cleaning and maintenance, insurance costs, couple months of mortgage interest, and really that was kind of all we had for that year. So we ended up with a net operating income of about $2,000 for the year. And then with depreciation, we actually had a net taxable income that was negative. So that's kind of another feature of real estate investing, is that because of depreciation, typically you don't have to pay a ton of taxes on your real estate income, or if you do really well, which you'll see in subsequent years, you at least get shielded to an extent via your depreciation. So 2019 was the first full year we had this property operating. We had rental income of about 14,000, and just kind of going through, we had a couple de minimis expenses. Insurance, looks like insurance jumped up pretty substantially from 2018 to 2019, which we kind of see the trend moving that way in subsequent years. Mortgage interest was about $8,300 for the year, which you'll see in the next couple of years that drops off. And that was because we refinanced it to a lower rate. I think early 2020, if I remember correctly, or late 2019. And then we finally see our taxes hitting here. So net operating income, $3,000 for the year, with depreciation expense gets us to a net taxable income of about negative 1,600 for the year. So I think that's a really good showing of kind of your first year expenses. Like, I feel like that is when you're working out all the bugs in a property. And this one was really straightforward. I remember we had a tenant that renewed for about 2.5 years. He was military, so he moved out in the middle of 2021. As you'll see, as the expenses reflect that, but we just kept rent the same for him. He never really contacted us for anything major that I can remember during that time. So yeah, I almost forgot that we own it, a lot of the times, just because he was such a great tenant to have in there. 2020, we had the exact same rental income number. Again, I didn't raise rent on him. I thought that he was paying market rent at that point, and he kept the house in great condition. So, we just let it ride. Same thing. Insurance went up about $50 from the year prior, just some cleaning and maintenance items. We always get the sewer line cleaned, especially this one. It's an older home, so clay pipes. Want to get it rooted at least once a year, just so that we don't have any sort of backup on that. And then let's see, mortgage interest expense. You can see that it decreased about $2,000 between 2019 and 2020. That's pretty substantial, in my opinion, and that was solely due to being able to refinance between the 2 years. I think that we had interest rates in the sixes, if I remember correctly, in 2019. And then we're able to refinance it to, I think, about 4 or so in 2020. And then going down, we have another tax expense that went up about almost $100 between 2019 and 2020. So you can kind of see, because 2019 and 2020 were so similar, exact same rental income, exact same tenant, you can see kind of the fixed expenses changing here. Obviously, the mortgage interest is a different story because we refinanced it into a much lower rate, but you can see insurance going up, you can see taxes going up. So I think that is a really good, thing to highlight, just so everyone is aware that those expenses will likely very much go up. So net operating income in this case, probably, mostly to do with the mortgage interest going down about $1,300. And then we have a couple little miscellaneous expenses. Our net operating income for 2020 was about $6,400. With depreciation, our net taxable income was about $1,800. So again, that net operating income at about $6,400 was shielded by our depreciation. So we only had to have taxable income of about $1,800, even though we made $6,400. So moving on to 2021, as you can see, the rental income number goes up. And the reason for this is our tenant that we had in there for several years, he got stationed elsewhere. So we did a tenant turnover. I believe it was in the spring, if I can remember correctly on that. So we had a lot of turnover related expenses that I'm of the mind that a lot of the repairs and maintenance obviously falls on the landlord to bear. I am probably even more lenient on that. Like there could have been a couple things that we charged him for, but due to tenant caused issues. But I mean, he was such a good tenant that we didn't do that. I think a lot of people that self-manage probably fall into that category. I mean, 2 years of really not having to think about it is kind of our way of saying thank you for keeping up the house, during that time. So, between 2020 and 2021, our rental income went up, and that's because that's kind of when I realized that we were renting pretty under market value at that point. I know I just mentioned that I thought that we were renting previously, at market value to the previous tenant. And I think at that time we were, but there is a huge jump in rent increases between, during the pandemic and everything. So that kind of caused that. So once we got, the house kind of tidied back up, there's just outside needed some help. The fence, he mentioned, hey, the fence had blown over like a year ago and I just didn't bother you guys with it. That sort of thing. It's like, well, I kind of wish that you told me when it happened, but no worries. We'll get it fixed, for the next person. But yeah, we ended up charging, I'm trying to think. I think we went from about $11.95, I think, to $15.50 or something between the 2 years. So that is really the difference between that. And then again, we have some advertising expenses. That was kind of the year that I decided that I wanted to get a 3D tour taken. So I had a professional photographer come through and actually had him do, one of those Matterport tours. That way, I felt as if I was able to send that to all the inquiries that we received from people and said, hey, here's the house itself. I guess a small house. I don't want people thinking, it's a mansion. And then when they get there, they're upset how small it is. I think that the 3D tour gives them a really good idea of, where does my furniture fit? Is this going to work for me? That way we don't have to waste each other's time, essentially. So I think that $200 was very well worth it. I'm very glad that I decided to do that. And I've been doing that on a lot of our turnovers just so that people can explore for themselves. It even comes with like room measurements and everything. So it's very, I would say one technology for sure that I think a lot of landlords should take advantage of. Cleaning and maintenance again. I mentioned that the yard definitely needed an overhaul cleanup on that. So that was, something that we took care of. And then just, a general deep clean of the house. We take care of that as well. Insurance. So the insurance increased again from 2020 to 2021 by over $100. So again, you can just see these fixed costs just creeping up each year. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind. Mortgage interest went down, and that's because you're amortizing a loan. That is typical for the interest to go down, principal to go up. And then repairs about 1,300. I believe that was for that section of fence that we needed to get repaired in that. And then taxes went up just a few dollars from the year prior, and that's pretty typical. My understanding is that Colorado Springs reassesses their taxes every 2 years, which you will see in the next year. There's a big jump from that. So that tracks. And then utilities, just, a few dollars for that vacancy period. So our net operating income. So even though we had more in rental income for that whole year, compared to prior years, our net operating income was lower at about $5,600 for the year. Again, minus depreciation, so taxable income being about $1,000. And the reason for the net operating income being so low is due to that turnover. So I think turnover costs is a very under appreciated cost when it comes to rental property investing. I really, really, really like keeping a good tenant in the property because, as you can see, well, I guess minus the fence. The fence should have been cleaned, fixed either way. Had we known about it, but just in terms of the cleaning and maintenance, that was about $1,500, just to take care of typical tenant turnover things like like I said, fixing up the yard, deep scrubbing down the house. That's really expensive if you have that every single year or every other year. That can really take away from your cash flow. So I think that this is a really good highlight of that. So then we got new tenants in very quickly. As you can see, the utility expense was pretty low. That we had once we got everything cleaned up and ready to go, we were able to turn it over very quickly. And so going into the 2022 numbers, our rental income bumped up to almost 21,000 for the year. Some of that had to do, so our tenants that came in 2021 ended up having to break the lease. So there is a lease break fee in there, but there's also a bump in rental income again. So, but 2022 is an interesting year because I wanted to highlight a few different changes that we did for this property. So again, cleaning and maintenance, you see that, that's a pretty large line item, about $1,100 for the year again, and it had to do with the turnover. So every time that there's a turnover, there's just like little items that you really just, it's sunk costs. You just have to pay it to clean it up for the next tenant, make your property attractive, and just kind of button up everything in that house. Insurance went down about $100. I don't know why. I'm thinking that I probably asked my insurance broker to shop us around at that point. He's very good about, yearly just kind of seeing, okay, for the appropriate amount of coverage, what is the best carrier for you? And I do not mind having to play a paperwork shuffle to get the best deal for that. And then mortgage interest went down just a tiny bit again. Same reason why as last time, the amortization impact. Repairs, pretty minimal, about $600 a year. Taxes, this is what I wanted to highlight. As you recall, in 2021, taxes were just shy of $600 a year. For 2022, they were $775 a year. That's a really substantial increase in, 1-year time frame. I believe that next 2023, the taxes should go up a few dollars there. But when they get reassessed again for 2024, I would imagine that they're probably going to go up quite a bit because it's going to be capturing sale data from these past couple of years, which, as I just mentioned, there are some comps in the neighborhood that sold for 300 or so. So I think that's really going to impact my property taxes in the next couple of years. But then one thing I wanted to bump up or highlight is property management fees. So we actually ended up putting this property under property management because the tenants ended up breaking their lease and moving out right about the same time that I was having a baby this summer. And I didn't want to deal with that because obviously there were more important things at hand. So we went ahead and put it under property management. Even though this house was very, very easy to manage, it was just kind of one of those bad timing aspects, and I didn't want to deal with it. I had other things going on. So, that was only about $1,000, added to the bottom line. But yeah, it was just kind of one of those moments that you are forced into kind of, relinquishing control over to somebody else. And come to find out, it's not hugely impactful to our bottom line. So that was kind of a nice surprise to that. So our net operating income for the year for 2022 on this property was $10,000 minus depreciation expense gives us about a $5,500 net taxable income. So just to kind of highlight, the just the steady, this is like I said, a bread and butter rental property. And just, small, well, not small, I guess, between 2020 and 2021, but, just incremental rent increases, just kind of going with the flow with the market. And knowing that your expenses are going to increase as well, but you have like a better grasp of kind of what to expect. So I already have in my mind kind of, what I'm thinking are going to be larger upticks in the upcoming year, and just kind of, earmarking that for myself. And yeah, I just love this property because, like, as you can see from 2019, the very first year that we had it a full year in service, the net operating income was about $3,000. And then in 2022, it was $10,000. I don't think that jump is typical, but, we did have an abnormal rental income piece to it since we did have a lease break fee in there. But still, I think that is just a really good, way to show that just kind of, buy a good property and just sit and wait, and you will kind of, hopefully, if everything goes right, you'll see, things just kind of steadily uptick over the years. And as part of this mini series, I'll show you some, situations where that might not necessarily happen because you might have some bumps in the road. But, this is kind of the ideal model of, what I would, if I could have my way, this would be the ideal rental property that I could just replicate in my portfolio infinitely, just because it's been such an easy one. So I hope that this is helpful for everyone to kind of take a 5-year look back approach at just a very traditional rental property, just kind of see some of the items that change, real life turnover cost items, and just kind of, seeing kind of the impact of how your rental property will ebb and flow over the year. So I will keep pressing forward with this mini series, and hopefully it will shine some light and, answer some questions that you might have. Thanks, everyone.